Hello and welcome to the Radiate Wellness Podcast with your host, metaphysician, Reiki master, and hypnotherapist, Christy Clemens Hoffman. Each week, we will discover teachings, tips, and tools to radiate your best life ever with practitioners, authors, and luminaries to help you on your path. Wellness, joy, peace, abundance. What do you want to radiate?
Hello and welcome to the Radiate Wellness Podcast. And today we radiate joy with Lisa McCourt, who is the author of Free Your Joy and other books about joy and love that have sold over 9 million copies. Wow. A joy trainer for more than 2 decades and host of the Joy Zone podcast. Lisa leads live small group courses and membership programs through her online joy school at lisamccourt.com. She's also the proud mom of an awesome transgender daughter and vocal PFLAG President, promoting awareness of compassion and rights for all humans. I love that. I have some very dear trans friends myself. Welcome. Christy, I'm so excited to play with you today. Oh, yes. So a joy trainer, what the heck? Did you get to be a joy trainer?
Ray, you didn't see that in middle school when we were like checking off the boxes for what we want to be when we grow up? You didn't see that? I know, right? It's sort of like your circus people when you're trying to explain what you do in a regular setting of people who aren't our particular tribe of people, right? I think it's a word that I had just come across a long time ago. I teach spiritual principles. Lots of us do. And for me, I just found that it was a little bit easier entry point because, as we all know, applying tried and true ancient spiritual principles that can be found from everywhere around the globe, the end result is joy. It's so that we can tap into the innate joy, love, peace that every single one of us is at the core of our being. And it was just sort of a way to go right to the end point, the result. It's like, let's practice these tools so that we can have joy.
So did you get your start as like a counselor or a therapist or anything like that?
No, I was psych major, but then that wasn't what I wanted it to be. And I just went into this whole like comparative religion and just studied spirituality. But really my entry point into teaching came through writing. I had written some books and I was teaching in conferences and places where authors are invited. And just that led into teaching that wasn't necessarily always tied to something I had written, but it was from writing books that I began just teaching the principles I was writing about.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Now, your podcast is also on the same mindbodyspirit.fm platform. So we are kind of like podcasting sisters.
Mind, body, spirit.
Right? I love that. I mean, it's a great platform. There's so many people who are like-minded, so many shows that are of a similar ilk. And also, you won the best expert guest, I think it was, in the Women in Podcasting Awards. That is awesome.
What pressure on me for podcasts after that?
Oh my God, that's huge. Right. So what do you like? Did you get a tiara or something?
I have a certificate.
I love it. So I want to talk about your book, The Free Your Joy. And I'm looking for the subtitle, The 12 Keys to Sustainable Happiness. Well, I suppose happiness is not sustainable. I've felt times when I wasn't feeling happy. So how can we create sustainable happiness?
I'll tell you when the subtitle was really a lot of pressure from the publisher. It wasn't necessarily the subtitle I first wanted because joy and happiness aren't the same thing, right? Joy is sustainable. Joy is sustainable through every perfectly legit emotion that we human creatures have come here to have. You can have joy through anger, through grief, through sadness, through frustration, when we're allowing those emotions to flow through us, when we're not repressing them, denying them, judging them. We all pick up this program somewhere along the way that there are emotions that are desirable that we want to have, and there are these other ones that we should avoid at all costs. And that programming is just sort of learned here. We can unlearn that and we can find joy in all of the emotions. So what's really sustainable is joy. We wouldn't even want happiness to be sustainable because any of us, spiritual people who have studied non-duality understand we need the yin and yang of it. We need the whole spectrum. We wouldn't know we were having a good day if we had never had a bad day. It would just be a day, right? So really, the joy is what is sustainable and not so much happiness. We wouldn't even want happiness to be every moment.
Okay, so for the uninformed, how would you differentiate joy and happiness? How would you define those?
Yeah, pretty much as a rightness feeling. Joy is, it's okay if I'm feeling really sad today. It's okay if I'm grieving today. It's recognizing the value in every emotion. Happiness doesn't allow you to do that. And I think a lot of us in spiritual circles look at it in terms of vibration, and we know that happiness is a high vibration. The joy that we can experience in sadness, grief, anger allows all of those that we typically think of as a lower vibration emotion to have a high vibration as well. Anger can be a beautiful rightness feeling when we're in defense of the vulnerable, or when we're learning to set our own boundaries and protect ourselves. Anger can have a lot of joy flowing through it. It can be a very high vibe emotion when we're not denying it, repressing it, letting it get sort of twisted into our reactionary patterns that are just part of our human programming. So the difference is really the sustainability, like we started talking about, and just valuing all of our emotions equally.
Anger can propel us toward action that is helpful and uplifting action. It can be used as a catalyst for more energy and more vibration, right? So let us know what is not working so we can work on what is working, right? So that is, I'm thinking of in joy, that is one of the highest vibrations we can have. But yeah, we can still be joyful and feel other emotions along with it too. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. One of my earlier books, the first step was emotion mixing. And it was really just allowing for that rightness within ourselves. When we're having a very low vibration experience of anger or grief, or there's typically a lot of shame associated with that. And that's, again, a learned paradigm that we come in here with no shame whatsoever. We come here as pure joy and love and light. And we learn to fight against and resist certain feelings and to shame ourselves around certain feelings. And when we can get the observing piece in place to rise above that, we can feel joyful and just a sense of okayness and rightness with whatever we're experiencing.
Oh, yeah. I love that. I love that. And you said you've got other books. I'm looking on your website now. So what other books do you have out?
Well, in the website right now, we're mostly focused on Free Your Joy. I had written a Hay House book in 2012 about my joy trainings. And I'm not just promoting that one a whole lot anymore because this is sort of the 10 years later, new and improved sort of version. That book was written from the joy trainings I was doing in Joy School. And this book also is written from the joy trainings, but it's just their 10 years of depth and experiences and examples that are in this one. I've done a lot of ghostwriting for spiritual teachers, and I don't put those on the website for obvious reasons. And I started my career way back with a book for children called I Love You, Stinky Face, that was really meant to impart a foundation for children to not grow up with that shame around who they are and that shame around their feelings and expression. So it's written very tongue-in-cheek. It's a fun parental read to a child, but it's got a lot of spiritual principle woven underneath it. And it's been hugely successful. It's had 10 sequels in the decades that it's been out. So that was really what kicked everything off for me.
Oh, that is exciting. So exciting. Now, you have a trans daughter.
I do.
Yes, that is wonderful. I know it's really hard for people to be trans right now. And I think it's one of the bravest things that we can do is to express who we truly are and our authenticity.
Yeah, these kids come in to change the world. That's why they're here. I work with a lot of families with trans children. I'm a PFLAG president. And how the Wiley universe is so funny. The book, I Love You, Stinky Face, that I was just referencing is completely about the parent expressing unconditional love to the child, but no matter what. And it's done in funny ways that a child can relate to. But the baby that was in my belly when I wrote that book is my transgender daughter. So it's just one of those things that you never know how it's going to come full circle. That book is gifted in the LGBTQ community between older, obviously like teenagers and older people just wanting to express unconditional love. But yeah, the trans daughter angle, the PFLAG hat that I wear doesn't completely mesh with what I'm most often invited to speak about. But I have been trying to use whatever platform I have to just raise awareness that there's so much misinformation. There's so much rhetoric that's just, it spreads like wildfire. And I just so encourage anybody to research what it means to be a transgender person today. I think we're still pretty much a fear-based culture. That's where we are in terms of humanity's evolving. They're fearful of things they don't know and they don't understand. And it is my certainty that if anybody took the time to speak with a transgender person in person or do the research on what every organization out there, every psychological organization, every medical association, we're all in agreement. Everybody agrees that gender dysphoria is a way that children are born, and we have a protocol for addressing it. And there's just so much damaging misinformation around it that a lot of people are suffering needlessly. So I like to just try to nudge people, just do a little research, just try to understand what it's about. It's not scary. It's not contagious. Nobody's going to touch it if we give like respect and compassion to these human beings.
No one is doing sex change operations at school. That is not possible.
Not happening. Nobody is doing sex change operations on children. Yeah, that's just a huge untruth that is out there.
No, that cannot happen. So I'm glad that you're using your platform to make a big difference for kids, because it's hard enough to be a teenager and it's hard enough to be a kid without feeling like you're in the wrong body. You're not right. Right. So yeah, I really respect that. Okay. I want to go back to your book now and the 12 keys. Can you go over some of the keys? I don't want to take too much of your time, but I would like to ask you a few simple favors. First of all, please rate, review, and share this podcast wherever you're listening. You know, it sounds like a simple little thing, and it is, but it has a huge impact for us because it helps other people find us in the podcasting algorithms. I don't know how it works, but I do know that it helps a lot. Next, if you would subscribe or follow wherever you're listening, whether that's YouTube or Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, Pandora, Spotify, wherever you're listening, just hit subscribe or follow, and that helps you and it helps us. It helps you because then you receive notifications when we have a new episode that's out. It helps us because, again, algorithm magic, I don't know what happens, but it helps. And then finally, you can support our podcast in a tangible way by going to radiatewellnesscommunity.com/podcast and then click on support the show. Now, we have a new feature too. We are now on Patreon. You can find us on Patreon. You can also find the link to Patreon when you go to radiatewellnesscommunity.com/podcast. So on Patreon for $3 a month or $5 a month, you can support your metaphysical and spiritual growth. You can learn about upcoming guests, and you can get early and ad-free versions of the shows. So please support us. This podcast is free for you to listen, but we have costs, and quite frankly, they come out of my pocket. So if you like this content, if you get a lot out of it, please see what you can do to give back. Thank you so much.
So early in the book, it really is applying tools and practices for self-observation. That's, what the Buddhists call the witness state. Everything in the book is derived from Buddhism, Bhagavad Gita, Tao Te Ching. Those are the things that I studied in my early adulthood. I always say, I'm not making this stuff up. I'm not channeling this information. This is tried and true practices from around the world. This is what we used to, as a human society, know and understand. And it's just sort of the way that we've evolved has been to disengage from this very true information. And I know that I'm preaching to the choir with you, Chrissy. I know you preach the same sort of information, that we are spiritual beings here having a human experience. And so the first few steps are really about getting clear on observing ourselves, observing our reactive tendencies, our default patterning, and recognizing that all of that is brain programs that's been installed, right? Our brains are just computers. We come in with, I like to use Eckhart Tolle terminology. I studied his work way when he was like an early on teacher. And he used to talk about that we all have a horizontal self and a vertical self. And, a lot of traditions will talk about a soul or a persona, but ego, I feel like people have associations to those terms. So I really like the correlation between those two really easy distinctions. We are horizontal self and we are our vertical self. So our vertical self is our soul self, our spirit, and our horizontal self is everything that we've downloaded into our brain program, our brain computer since we've been here. So mostly that's a bunch of beliefs and ideas we absorbed from our parents, our earliest caretakers. Some of it is actually passed down in our DNA from our ancestors, some of our fears and beliefs. There was a study at Emory University with mice who got an electric shock every time they smelled cherry blossoms. And they studied them for 4 generations later of mice who had never gotten the shock, still went into a panic when they smelled cherry blossoms. So we all have an ancestry, a DNA that affects our default settings and our brain program. We can get into some teachers that believe that there are past life interferences and what we're believing and doing and seeing. But the more clarity we can gain around None of that is really us. What we truly are in a forever sense is our soul self, the part of us that's genderless, ageless, timeless, doesn't actually require this meat to be in existence. The more we can pull a lot of the importance that we place on our external circumstances out of our experience. And the joy is there. It's not something that we have to go create or manifest or chase down. Every one of us is joy. That's just how we are when we can get the obstructions out of the way. So most of the practices of the book are just step by step removing those obstructions, sort of just taking those brain programs offline so that we can experience the joy that we are.
Oh, wow. So do you have a certain process that you use to take those brain programs offline?
Well, we use a lot of them because what they really are is just habits, right? Are habits easy to break? No, everybody knows habits are not easy to break, but everybody knows it can be done with some commitment and some application. So yeah, we start by checking in with ourselves in Joy School, maybe 3 times a day for starters, and you can set your alarm to go off or watch, or ideally you work up to like once an hour. You check in and just sort of take stock of what am I feeling? What am I feeling right now? I teach my Joy Scholars to use terms of endearment, which was really hard for some people. I'm like, darling, what are you feeling? Sweetheart, what are you feeling? We find the term of endearment for ourselves that feels okay. And I've had Joy Scholars say that they tear up every time they try to call themselves something kind because the voice in our head typically is not conditioned to be so kind to us. Right. So it's what are you feeling? What do you need? Because we don't ask ourselves what we need. And sometimes it's really easy. Sometimes we might just need to open the window or grab a cup of tea or have 5 minutes to just like cocoon and close our eyes. What are you feeling? What do you need? And what would you love? Because so much of our experience of not joy is just really because we're so tied up in the minutia of our lives. We're so focused on what we feel like we have to do, what others are expecting us to do, what we've set forth as our to-do list for the day. And just asking ourselves on a regular basis, what do I need and what would I love, trains us to look in that direction. And sometimes what would I love is something that feels completely unattainable or impossible. But the more we train our focus in that direction, the better the opportunities start appearing for us to have what we'd really love for ourselves, whether that's a nice dinner tonight or something really grand that's going to take a year or more to get there.
Oh, I love that. Yeah. And the research shows that when we've got something that we're trying to attain, that we're working toward, that we're planning, we're getting the same effects. For example, we are looking forward to, or we would love a vacation, and we're looking forward to the vacation, we're planning the vacation, and we get the same type of good feeling hormones from planning the vacation and looking forward to what we love. So I could see how just recognizing and naming what you love and what you would love to have in this moment can create that good feeling.
Yes. And then there's a check-in because when we focus on what we desire, it's either going to constrict our energy or expand our energy. And we can get really trained in feeling that, all day we're constricting and expanding. That's just like our experience of life. And when our desires, bringing our desires to mind, cause a constriction of our energy, we know that we're not deep down believing that's possible for us. That's when desires actually tank our vibration as opposed to elevating it. So we have to sort of like unpack that with a lot of processes and try to see if we can shift our deep down expectation that it's something that we can have and something that we deserve. Again, the shame that we're all carrying under the radar is like a huge determinant of what we're bringing into our lives. If we can actually believe that we deserve a thing, then our energy is going to expand when we think about it. Our vibration's going to raise. We can only call in the opportunities that are a match to the vibration that we're sending out, we're radiating, right? We want to radiate that vibration so that we can create a match for that vibration, right? Because we're always going to be creating whatever we're radiating based on that vibratory state. So yeah, desires are tricky. We always say like in Joy School, there's a correct and incorrect way to want, but we're actually an effective way to want and an ineffective way to want things. So we want those desires are opening our energy field and elevating our vibration. And that's when we see the steps to take.
Oh, I love it. So there's an effective way to want and an ineffective way to want. Can you break that down for us?
Yeah. So our manifestations can never outrun our deep down beliefs and our deservingness. So if we're wanting something, but we don't believe we deserve it, and sometimes that's on an unconscious level. Sometimes our, conscious brain would say, of course I deserve it. I'm a hard worker. I'm, whatever we've been taught makes us deserving of things. When we can get past that and understand that we deserve it just because we're here to have a beautiful life and that we can be playful about that and not put Sometimes we're wanting something so bad and been trying so hard, we're actually blocking it because that's not a real high vibration place. So sometimes the strength of our desire is actually an impediment when we don't believe we deserve it, when we don't have a legitimate expectation that it's going to happen. So that would be an ineffective way to want. All right. And then an effective way to want would be doing the work to really know ourselves as our divine essence, as our vertical self, to know that we're all just pushing pieces around the game board here in this earth play that we all auditioned for and signed on for and came down to play our parts, that none of it is as consequential as it feels like it is to our human self. That's when we elevate our vibration to, I could have it or I could not have it, but I think I prefer to have that new job. And once we can approach it with that lightness and that ease and that expectation, the energy's cleared. It's ours.
That is fabulous. And you actually teach people to do this in your Joy School.
Yeah, that's what we do.
Are there assignments?
Yeah. And it's always optional because we're there for the joy. So we call it home play assignments. The book has different home plays for the book takes you through a year. It's like a year of DIY Joy School. So I love people come into Joy School. I love it's all very, very personal and live, small groups. I don't do any like recorded sessions or anything. I know everybody tells me I should, but I don't. I like to be like in the room where it happens. But Joy School, not everybody can come to Joy School. So the book is a year's worth of practices that don't require the support of the group, the support of me, the coaching, that are just things that you can do on your own. And every week there's a home play assignment. So yeah, there's homework.
Oh, that is fantastic. So who can benefit from this program in Joy?
Yeah. You'd think we'd get like a lot of but miserable people in Joy School. And somehow that doesn't seem to be the case. And I think that's because while any person that you would stop on the street and say, would you like more joy? Almost anybody's going to say, sure, I'd like more joy. But most people don't believe that it's something that they have any control of. Most people are still under the illusion that like joy is dependent on all these external factors, that if that were happening and I had more money and I had the partner and I had the house, if those things were happening, I could finally be joyful. So when that's your belief, you're not going to be attracted to something joyful. So I found it to be a pretty vibrationally specific type of person who comes into Joy School. It's really usually someone who's been around the spiritual block to some degree, has already been listening to podcasts or reading books, has some understanding of vibration and energy, and they just want to hone it. They want to practice their skills. And that's what our communities support. It's always in support of, we're going to apply these principles in our lives, because it's fun to read about spiritual principles. All our aha light bulbs go off, but reading about it, learning it doesn't change anything. It's really in the application to our day-to-day existence that we get to see the magic happen, see it unfold.
Oh, I love that. So really anybody can benefit from it as long as they believe that they can have joy.
Yeah.
Right? No.
Yeah, and you'd think that would cast a pretty wide net, but actually a lot of people don't believe that they get joy.
Oh, no, I totally believe that. A lot of people don't feel like they can have health. A lot of people don't feel like they can have abundance. So we've got a lot of programming to do away with. Yeah. Now, a lot of people think when they think of joy, they think of giddy sprinkles and rainbows and sunshine, but it's not that, is it?
No, it's really not. I mean, it can have that. It can have plenty of that. Yeah.
Sprinkles and rainbows.
Yeah. And the more sprinkles and rainbows you believe you deserve and you're here for, the more you're going to get. Right. So yeah, it's really about dismantling the blocks to the sprinkles and rainbows.
Mm-hmm. Right. And so what I'm getting to, it's not this giddiness all the time. It's a set point, right? So the giddiness can be fleeting. The giddiness can be unsustainable.
Yeah. And in fact, a lot of people when they're new to Joy School will find themselves just crying a lot, just crying, not so much out of like horrible despair, but just the recognition that so many of us are sort of numb to life, not, cut off from what is really present for them. So there can be a real depth as we touch our own sadness and grief that can actually be very elevating and joyful while we're experiencing the tears and the pain, because most of us have stored pain, stored traumas from earlier events that are stored in our energy field. And they have to have the opportunity to be felt, and the attunement of the group in Joy School really makes that opening available for a lot of people. Most of us just were never properly attuned to. I don't like to throw parents under the bus, but It's just where we are in humanity. Like our parents didn't know how to be just curious and welcoming of whatever unfolded from us. Most of us are traumatized, and what can be big T trauma or little T trauma, by one of two directions. Either our parents molded us with too much love and attention, and you need to be this in the world, which comes out of love from the parent. They think, I want my child to be successful and safe and all the things that have a leg up in the big scarcity arena that so many of us believe the world to be. So the child is sort of over manipulated, or the opposite, where there's just too much neglect, which doesn't mean that they weren't fed and clothed and housed appropriately, but just the parent didn't know how to attune to the essence of the child in a way that they felt seen. So either one of those directions causes us to store away all this pain that defines who we are and how we're operating in the world, how we feel about ourselves, how we feel about others, how we feel about the world at large, our degree of fear that we carry around. And it really requires going back and giving those wounds proper attunement, proper love. And that's what gives them the opportunity to be felt and released so that they're not creating our default settings anymore.
Right. We all have those default settings. I mean, I consider this our life's work, right? We come in with these things, putting to rest generations of patterns, understanding these, moving them through the body, teaching, learning, and clearing them away. But there are so many ways, so many roads lead to Rome, so many roads lead to home.
I know you have some amazing protocols that you do, that you use to help people to release that.
Right. Any of us in this space. But you know what, Lisa, I used to teach college. And so I taught college English, and I would explain semicolons. And I would explain semicolons 10 different ways because one of those ways would resonate with somebody. And so you're doing the protocols that you do. You've got Joy School, et cetera. And I use other tools, but there's one of our tools is going to work for somebody.
Yeah.
And I absolutely love that. No two of us are alike in any way, shape, or form. So whatever we can bring is going to work for somebody, right? It's going to resonate.
Exactly true. And I remember talking about that a lot when I first started writing about, because I had a closeted situation for a long time in my early adulthood where this was my closet passion and my regular friends didn't know. And then when I came out with all my spiritual leanings, it was really about just this desire to join a team. All of my understanding, all of my completely life-changing things that I learned and started applying came from books and teachers. And it just became so apparent to me that to have any kind of a continued meaningful existence on this planet, I had to join that team of books and teachers, understanding that there are scats of us, but everybody is going to resonate. Everybody who comes over to wanting to explore their spiritual self, there's been some teacher, some video, some protocol somewhere along the way that vibrated similarly to that individual. So the more we have in the team, the more different vibrations we're offering, the more personalities we're bringing to it, the more people will be introduced to these completely life-altering principles that are going to change the trajectory of humanity at some point.
Oh, yeah. Don't you feel like we're at a time when there's like this tipping point, right?
Yeah.
There are many things that I really don't like to see going on right now. And it makes me very nervous to see some of these things going on. And having a trans daughter, you know what I'm talking about, right? I'm really afraid for my trans friends and women and everything. But there's also so many opportunities. So many people are looking for something more meaningful and different ways of being and showing up. So it is an exciting time right now that we can all make these differences.
Yes. We'll just try to keep looking at it for sure.
Yeah. So you've got this program, Thrive in 25.
Yes.
Can you tell us about that? Because 2025 is just around the corner.
It is. And it's going to be 4 sessions per month. And we do a different time zone, different times for different time zones and different work schedules. But it's not necessary to make all 4 sessions. That's a big commitment for a lot of people's schedules. But it really is another vehicle for this application I've been talking about, where we meet online, live and in person, in support groups. Every month, there'll be a new tool that we'll be practicing, we'll be focusing on one slice of spiritual practice that we can go do. And we come back and talk about how it's worked out in our lives and where we're having struggle applying this to our lives. And just the energetic container that's created, like the people in the groups love one another so much. Once a year, I do a retreat specifically for the online Joy Schoolers that's not open to, I don't shout about it on Facebook. I don't promote it. It's just for and the love when they're actually in the real time space with one another, because energy is non-local. We create a loving container on Zoom every week. But yeah, it sounds sort of a sketch to say I love people professionally, but I swear that is what happens. It's like any of us, the key to healing is to love ourselves more. And very often it's hard to access that without a loving container. And the loving container of the group just elevates the vibration of a new Joy Schooler to the point where they can do that healing, where they can feel those things that need to be felt. So that's what Thrive in 25 is about. You can do it for 3 months at a time. You can sign up for the whole year. There are gifting opportunities because it's so great to come in with a partner. We have, married couples, we have moms and daughters. It's so great to come in with somebody. So we needed a really great discount for holiday gifting. Yeah, it's just promoting Joy School in 25. We're going to need some joy.
I love it. Yes, we're going to need some joy. And all of this can be found at your website, lisamccourt.com, MCCOURT.com. Yeah. Is there anything else we haven't talked about that you think is important?
Yeah, I guess that last little word I threw in there that has become so cliche, and we all think we know what self-love is. And it's not the bubble baths and buying the shoes. It's so much more. It's really that acceptance of all those shadow parts of ourselves. A lot of Joy School is just in shadow work and childhood reparenting. And if you take nothing away from this podcast today, just take away the message to be more kind and gentle with yourself, because that's where it all starts. And without that, no other spiritual tool is going to make a dent until we're learning that self-compassion.
That is so true. Well, thank you so much for joining me today. This has been super, super fun.
I look forward to hosting you on Joy Zone.
On Joy Zone. We're going to have a good time.
Yes.
All right, fellow mindbodyspirit.fm podcaster. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you, Christy. I loved it.
Don't know what to watch next? Decisions. Well, we've got some suggestions. You can click this little video here and watch that. It's something that we think you're going to like. If you like the last one, you're going to like that one too. You can also click on the subscribe button. And if you do that, then you'll get notifications whenever we have a new video up. Win-win, right?